So I think that I have scheduled the live stream, but it may not start broadcasting on YouTube until it's scheduled to, which is at, oh no, it's working now. So I'm going to turn that off. And I'll also close that so that I don't get my sound coming through. So I think that we should now be live on YouTube. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, that's good. If anybody's sort of got the YouTube live stream open, then okay, could we let Joe in, please? And so in terms of the candidates, we're just waiting for Ewan, and then once Ewan is here, we can let in everybody from the waiting room. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you for coming.
I can see the live stream working.
You can see the live stream working. Excellent.
Yeah, I think so. Although
be a sigh of relief.
yeah.
It is a sigh of relief. I mean, I tested it, made sure it was working, but that doesn't mean I don't have nerves about it.
Well done.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put the heating on because I'm bleeding freezing.
Fair enough. Oh, yeah, the other thing is co-hosts, if you could monitor the chat to hosts and co-hosts, because I don't think I'm going to be able to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because I'm going to want to try and watch for hands and the Q&A. Hi, Ewan.
Hi. Sorry, I'm a bit late. How's things?
That's all right. I hope you're warm enough. Sarah
I am
just
not.
had to turn on the heating.
It's freezing. Well, outside, and it's freezing in the office because our long
Right.
story about the heating system here.
Try being further north. That's all I can say, Ewan.
I'm very conscious that it's yeah, we've got an advantage in the valley, but Thames Valley, but yeah. Hope you're all well.
Okay, so as I said, you're each going to get 5 minutes to open, and then it'll be a strict. I'm going to use a beeping timer to time your opening and your answers to questions. So,
Sorry, that's my dog.
okay, well, yes, we may get visited by my cat at some point. She's already dropped in once. If it gets interesting enough, she'll come along. And then it'll be strict 2-minute answers to the questions. And I'm going to pick your names out of a box at random to start off with because. So if we could let in the members, please, co-hosts.
So we don't know who's starting already.
If you want to know, let's have a look. I've got them here. They are random. So Ewan is going first, then Vicky, then Joe, then Sarah. And basically what I'll do is for every question, I'll move the names along one. So Vicky will always speak after Ewan, Joe will always speak after Vicky, and Sarah will always go after Joe. But obviously for the first question, Ewan will be the last to speak and Vicky will be the first. I hope that makes sense. I have asked the my co-host colleagues to make sure that everybody who's come in, it has an identifiable name. Obviously we can't check who members are, but just to make sure we don't get people coming in with random names or worse. So I think we're ready to start, and so I'm Aisha Walker. I'm president of the UCU branch at the University of Leeds. And I'm really delighted today to be able to welcome the candidates for UCU General Secretary. Each of the candidates will get 5 minutes to open to tell us what their vision is for the union and what they will do if elected General Secretary. And then we'll be opening the floor to questions. If you wish to ask a question, then you can either post it in the Q&A or you can raise your hand. At the moment, we have the chat turned off because I just don't have the ability to keep track of a chat stream as well as hands up and timing answers to questions. But if you do have any problems, then you can send a chat message to the hosts and co-hosts. I'd ask you not to message me personally. I'm asking, we have a number of co-hosts, Jenny, Rachel, Emily and Sandy, who are going to be looking after things in the background for me, and I really appreciate your help. So thank you, candidates, for coming along today. I really appreciate it. And we have Ewan Magochi, we have Joe Grady, we have Vicky Blake, and we have, I can't see where you are, Sarah, but Sarah Weiner. There you are, waving, thank you. And the first person that I'm going to ask to tell us about your plans if you're elected is Ewan, please.
Thank you very much, Aisha, and thank you to all of the organisers and everyone for coming along to listen to us talk about what the next 5 years in UCU should be like. My name's Ewan McGahey. I work at King's College London, professor in the law department, specialising in labour law and public service regulation. And I've also been branch president of King's College London UCU branch for the 3 years previous up until end of 2023. So I want to put out there right from the beginning that we're at a crossroads in UK education. We've had 13 years of Tory rule, we've had a pandemic, and now unprecedented attacks on workers' rights. And we've got to decide what we want to be as a union. I believe that our union's purpose is to secure results for members, to improve our working lives, and also to change society around us. And I want to try and persuade you that we can become a functioning union again that really does get gains for its members, slow, hard, fought for gains sometimes, but we've got to do that, and we've got to do it with a positive agenda, which we can achieve. So we can restore real pay with a proactive sectoral collective bargaining strategy, not constantly being on the defensive, but putting forward reasons why we've got to see a reversal in the decline of real pay that we've had, really not just since 2019, but also since 2009. We can win democratic workplaces with majority elected governing bodies so that people in the councils of our universities and colleges aren't appointing their own successors, but they are accountable to staff. We can take measures to undo the structural causes of the gender pay gap, the race pay gap, the disability pay gap, including 26 weeks at least paid parental leave for everyone, raised and equalised regardless of gender, and replacing biased markets with positive action in hiring, pay and promotion decisions. And we can secure our jobs, including restoring academic freedom, making sure that every single workplace has a written collective agreement that enshrines at least legal rights to job security. We can be part of halting the climate crisis by going to 100% clean energy straight away at UCU and ranking and publicising what universities are doing as we collectively bargain for change at universities and colleges right across the country. And we can do this while becoming part of a new national education service free at the point of use, based on coordination, not competition, and making sure that we are also contributing to the discussion about universal public services that we need in the next 5 years and throughout the 21st century. In our union, I know that our branches, our members in our branches work tirelessly to do things every day to get results for members. That's certainly true in my branch at King's. And I think that we need a national and a central UCU that does the same. My granddad was from Yorkshire, Wakefield, and he always said to me that we've got to be honest. We've got to be honest about where we are today in UCU. We've seen over 6,000 lost members since the academic year of 2019-2020, leading to a density low point and millions in lost dues. We've had pay down for starting lecturers by around £6,000 in real terms since 2019. The loss of the aggregate ballot and many others last year. No court cases by UCU to defend members' legal rights, and a union which currently, believe it or not, is in dispute with its own staff on pay and sanctioned by the Health and Safety Executive last year. So on day one, if you vote, and it is really a question with such low turnout of just everybody voting, what I can promise you is this. We will be the change that we want to see first at UCU as we bargain for it with a real strategy of sectoral collective bargaining and local and patent bargaining right around the country. We'll end the pay dispute with UCU staff and make sure that all the reduced USS contributions go back into staff's pockets because it's their money. We'll start to negotiate for raise and equalised paid parental leave, first with UCU and then as a model for everywhere else in the UK. We'll go to 100% clean energy, we'll boost the legal department, and we'll make sure that there are simple changes with data and IT organisation so that we never lose a ballot again. So I think that we can do all of these things, and I look forward to saying more in discussion. Over to you, Aisha.
Thank you. You did that with 8 seconds to go, so brilliantly done. The next candidate to give us your 5-minute pitch, Vicky, is over to you. Vicky Blake, please.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm Vicky. I work here at Leeds in widening participation. I'm also branch secretary and I'm a former president. I'm a former UCU UK president as well, and I'm standing because we need substantial changes, and that means a new approach to leadership. My manifesto is at vickyblakeUCU.uk, and it's practical. It's inspired by conversations with members across our union and 15 years experience of organising, representing and negotiating for members. And the number one thing that I stand for is focusing on organising. Like many, I spent almost a decade on insecure contracts, and UCU is my lifeline. Organising with other members developed my political education and it developed my confidence. I chaired the Anti-Casualisation Committee for 5 years, and together in that time we transformed UCU by deliberately working across factions and across our whole membership to establish job security as a pillar of UCU's industrial claims at both local and sectoral levels. And I think divisive infighting really doesn't need to define our union. So we need to engage more members and develop ideas together in open, informed and constructive deliberation. I will equip members and committees with reliable information and support to do this, and it's vital for us to build density and engagement with that. I think social media can be useful, but it can't be seen as a primary tool to build a branch. And I know the tireless work of branch committees and activists firsthand, and I believe branches must be understood as our union's fundamental building blocks. I'll invest in organising hubs which build on our existing regional structures to help us work more horizontally together across our branches and sectors, including where we're pushing for binding sectoral bargaining in England FE. I commit to expand our in-house research to improve our confidence when making decisions and developing strategy. And there's no substitute for attention to detail. We'll provide comprehensive, accurate and consistent legal, political and financial information to increase leverage in negotiations and maximise the impact when members withdraw their labour. And this data is really vital in opposing the wave of restructures and department closures hitting post-16 education right now, especially in post-92s and across arts and humanities. The formal processes move so fast, we need to be prepared with concrete information on, for example, private consultancy firms advising institutions, institutional financial positions, including analysis of poor financial practice and risky or unethical investments, and branch-specific information on workforce patterns and points of industrial leverage. So I will work with branches and UCU staff to prepare sample local grievances related to restructuring and department closures and draw on the expertise of members and elected committees to do that. I'll work with members to uphold and strengthen our union democracy and to improve our legal provision and member awareness. And this will include improving legal support in potential test cases and establishing a dedicated mechanism to support migrant members who need urgent specialist advice. I'll also launch an equalities research project with our elected equality committees to regularly review and improve our own union practices alongside gathering data and analyses that we need to drive action for equity in our workplaces. I'll also prioritise repairing the relationship between UCU as an employer with our recognised staff union Unite, who have raised multiple issues around systemic racism, health and safety, well-being and hybrid working. I believe as a trade union employer, we should model excellent practice and that this kind of conflict isn't in anyone's interest. And we know from our own workplaces how damaging aggressive or defensive responses to critical feedback can be. We face unprecedented challenge, including climate emergency and AI, and both are already significantly affecting how we live and work. I'm really proud to be a founding member and co-chair of the Climate and Ecological Emergency Committee and to be involved in organising this year's Cradle to Grave hybrid conference as Education Committee Chair. I'm committed also to auditing UCU's own emissions and to review our use of materials, including single-use plastic. So I'm going to finish by saying I believe in UCU. I believe we can secure a better future for our sector. We can build our union. We can proactively meet the many challenges that we face, and we have to organise, democratise and unite to win for members across post-16 education. And that's what you'll see in my manifesto, so please check it out online. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Vicky. The next person I'd like to invite to speak is Jo Grady.
Thank you, Chair, and hello, everyone. Afternoon. I am just going to speak from the heart today. We are 2 weeks into this election. I know many of you will have voted, but I assume lots of you are here because you haven't. So, you know, I'm not going to attack any other candidates. I'm not going to read from a script, and I'm certainly going to positively campaign around what I think we need to do. I think that this election is a really important vehicle. And I think it's important because it allows us an opportunity to reset UCU, to reset our strategies, to reset our priorities, and I think to reset our standards of debate. I think, and I'm very happy for this to happen today, as candidates, we need to be questioned, we need to be challenged, even criticised where justified, and clearly given the opportunity to set out how we believe UCU should be led. I don't want us to shy away from debate today. I hope that we can do it in a comradely fashion, but we are standing to lead one of the most powerful trade unions in the country. And I think our ideas, our principles, even election packs, if we've made them, and our records, they do need to be scrutinised. One of the things I do want to say in this opening statement is, as General Secretary, your voice can become blurred. And this is for many reasons. It can either be because you're rightly supporting a collective decision that has been made or for unity of the union. But what this campaign allows me to do is to clearly set out to you what I think about a wide range of issues. And for some people, it might be the first time that you've heard them. I have produced, and they've been on my website for a few months now, detailed and coherent plans. This involves a manifesto for the entire union, but it also includes industrial strategies for FE and for HE. I shared them early because I know they need to be challenged, critiqued, questioned, but what I would also like is for you to add to them your ideas. I think in higher education in particular, our members have really been crying out for a plan. We had a survey at the end of last year that demonstrated just that. In FE, we have been following a clear plan. I want us to leave this election, if I am re-elected, with the clear knowledge that if you vote for me, you are voting for a clear and winning strategy across the union. And I'm not here today to say that I have got everything right. We haven't got everything right. You know, in the last 4 years, we have had the most right-wing government for decades, anti-union employers, a global pandemic, and, you know, that's before we even consider the role of a hostile media. And I think against that backdrop, who could have possibly got everything right? But during this period, we have done a number of things that we can all be proud of. In further education, we have won more ballots and settlements than ever. We have won 2 national higher education ballots. We've won a historic pensions victory in USS. We've been winning in prison ed and in adult ed. We literally were the union that saved lives, not just in our institutions, but in our communities during COVID. We increased the union's profile during this time and our standing in the wider movement, which means we are the beneficiaries of so much solidarity when we take action. And one thing that I'm very proud of is that during this time, with the very hostile government that I've outlined, we have delivered an equality agenda that is transformative and that is much needed. And I only need to draw attention to Rishi Sunak in the Houses of Commons this week. So I'm excited to be here today. And I think, you know, I'm really excited to engage with the questions, to be challenged. And, you know, let's make sure that we have a good debate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jo. And finally, I'll on this round, finally over to Sarah, please.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me. My name's Sarah Weiner. I'm the branch secretary at Liverpool John Moores University, a post 92 university, and have held many positions at regional and national level over the time I've been in the UCU, which is 13 years. I believe that it's decision time for the UCU. Do we want a GS who tells us what to do? Sorry, my dog is crying in the background. Or one who decides what, or a union that does what members decide. And we're in a year, 1 second, shh, come here. We're in a year where the elections come after a year of industrial action in higher education, action in various further education branches, strikes in the NHS, rail, schools, etc. At the same time, the world is on fire. We've got a cost of living crisis, genocide in Gaza supported by our government and many of our institutions, and I don't believe things can go on as normal. Yet, despite all our efforts, we have not won enough on pay, workloads, casualisation, or other issues. And I think we really need to ask why and come up with solutions for all sectors of the UCU, so we don't have winners and losers, so that our prison educators are safe at work and that we win national bargaining in adult education and further education. I think that many members at the moment feel completely disempowered and frustrated. And I don't think this can be fixed with opinion polls or surveys, which have a 19% turnout. When members make decisions through our democratic structures, it is the UCU leaders who must carry them out, not block, delay, or undermine them. When we're in dispute, we need, as Congress sector conferences agreed, strike committees to control our disputes effectively and branch delegates meetings as well before any higher education sector meeting or FE sector meeting. The strength of our union lies in the actions of its members. The GS doesn't win things, members do. So it's important that the union is led from the bottom up. And right now, to be honest, it isn't. But I think we can fix that and be a better, more effective union. In HE, employers are going on the offensive in a dozen universities or more, increasing with Kent announced the last couple of days. And I think this is because we don't have an active mandate. And I also believe that attacks will get worse if we don't respond quickly and collectively. We need an urgent higher education sector conference to form policy and do what members decide. We cannot wait until Congress. In further education last year, members called for an aggregated ballot, but this was delayed and individual branches allowed to opt out. We need to get the campaign in FE back on track, and I think we should at least be aiming to match school teachers' pay, as poor as it is. A union doesn't change simply because you change the General Secretary. Its strength lies in the activity of its ordinary members, but the last 5 years show that it matters who we vote for. When we stand together, we can change the world in our day-to-day jobs and the world we live in. The strength of the union comes from all its members through our democratic decisions, and these being living live spaces of collectivity to create power rather than just isolated individuals being asked to give an opinion on a set of pre-decided choices. Of course, I've got my own ideas about how we might win, and I'll argue for them. But these things are actually for our members to decide. And as a General Secretary, I would ensure that the decisions are implemented, and I will take the average UCU member's wage as well. Our members are the people who win, not our GS. The GS's role is to lead and support. I just want to finish by talking about Palestine. There are huge attempts to silence us on campus, as well as our students, and we must continue to defend our members against this. I believe we should do so collectively. It's a human response right now to speak up at this very moment, and I support boycott, divest and sanctions in our universities and elsewhere. We need to fight for this collectively, be loud and proud saying this, and that's another reason I think you should vote for me for General Secretary. Thank you, and many apologies for my dog.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm now going to move on to take questions from members present, and I'm going to give you two options for asking questions, either to use the Q&A, in which case any questions typed in there you can also ask in person, or to put up your hand as Josh has just done, which is great. I'm going to say please don't send me questions in the chat. Having the Q&A and the raised hands is enough streams for me to manage. The first question that I have is from Stephen Spencer of the University of York. Oh, sorry, I wanted to say two more things about questions. One is, could you please ask your questions in such a way that all the candidates can answer them. So don't ask questions that just apply to individual candidates. And the second thing is, I'm going to try to make sure that I only take one question per topic. So if we have a question on BDS, I wouldn't expect to take another question on BDS unless we have far too much time left at the end, which at the moment it doesn't look as though we will. So the first question I have is in the Q&A, and it's from Stephen Spencer of York. Stephen, I don't know if you want to ask the question in person or if you'd like me to read it out.
I'm happy for you to read it out. My signal's not great.
Okay, so Stephen's question is, can each candidate appraise the industrial action undertaken by UCU in higher education during the 2022-23 academic year, and specifically, why was it not effective? The first person to answer this question will be Vicky, and after Vicky, it'll be Joe. And Vicky, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. It's a huge question and an important one. And I think it's important to note that at times we had coherent strategies that were decided by elected representatives of members, and they weren't reactive. We had a long-term 6-month plan that involved lots of stages before strike action and marking an assessment boycott, but it wasn't implemented in that way. And many of the HEC decisions that are being questioned or denounced were responses to a kind of piecemeal undermining of that strategy. And I think that's really important to note. We ended up excluding options from debate, including creative suggestions that weren't fully explored that members came up with, like discontinuous indefinite action and other suggestions. And I think it's very noteworthy that anyone who was attending a branch delegate meeting or a sector conference meeting could clearly see that the will of branch delegates was for action to continue in February 2023. But that was undermined and ignored, and there were skewed e-votes, there were limited questions that produced a result that, as had a knock-on effect, caused our overall dispute to suffer, and has undermined member confidence. And then if you think about the marking and assessment boycott, that was initially proposed in a strategy by our General Secretary, but was then resisted, and it was implemented later in the year than the will that was expressed at that BDM. And we had unclear and late information on that too. So it undermined and limited the participation of members. And it was consistent pressure from branches that brought up the level of support. And then, of course, we had an issue where we had a decision that was made at HEC, which went back to the employers looking for an interim deal that basically undermined our leverage that the MAB was producing at that point. So there are lots of problems, and it's very difficult to appraise the entire thing in 2 minutes. But I think better communications and better information earlier in the day, and then therefore more discursive appraisal of different ideas that are possible, and that dialogue feeding into the decision-making processes would work.
Thank you, Vicky. If I could now move on to Jo, and after Jo, it'll be Sarah.
Thank you. I'm going to try and answer this in 2 parts, because I think some of your answer in terms of appraising the industrial action are more kind of broader structural things about our density. I think that, if you compare USS to the Forsyths dispute, we have, 65, 67 institutions in USS. They're pre-92s, they tend to have higher density. When you open that out to the pay dispute, which was with a different employer, we have less density overall, and it's more branches, more complex dispute, more unions negotiating in it. So if you were to look at USS with one clear demand and better density where we were, I think you can see that we were more successful at getting what we wanted. And obviously that campaign had been ongoing for a long time. With pay, completely different set of circumstances. So if you look at my strategy document, you will see that I am suggesting a completely different strategy for pay next time, which I think will lead to a better outcome. With that said, to go back to this particular dispute, obviously we had record ballot wins, we had record support from members, but we had a split HEC. And I actually think on some of the big issues, we had a bit of a split membership if you look at when we surveyed them too. Some people wanted to call action all before Christmas, other people wanted to call it afterwards. So we went into the dispute without a plan. Decisions were made, meeting to meeting, HEC to HEC, BDM to BDM. When we had the reject on the pay offer, if we'd have been using that as a structure test for the marking and assessment boycott, we didn't pass it on our own terms. It was, I know there was a majority for reject, but it wasn't a super majority. And I think we have to reflect and learn from that. And that's why the strategy document I've written is one that makes sure that when we do this next time, we have a pre-agreed strategy with structure tests and all of those things in, so we can't have decisions unpicked as we go along.
Thank you, Jo. And finally, if we could have the answer from Sarah.
Yeah, I'm not finally, it's Ewan as well needs to speak.
Sorry. Yes, sorry. Ewan is final.
Sorry. Okay. I agree with much of what Vicky says about how the coherent strategy, which Higher Education Committee came up with and Higher Education Sector Conference came up to, was undermined and not carried through. And, a debate was held on Twitter, which I think didn't do the union or anyone else any good. I also think that one of the issues is members didn't feel that they had control of the dispute, because all the things that we had set in place, like branch delegates meetings with, answers which were answerable, that strike committees weren't utilised and they weren't used. And there was a constant feeling that our decisions were being undermined by the General Secretary and others. Our democratic structures were not adhered to, which left people feeling hopeless. I also think, people put on an absolutely valiant fight. I also think that there were key issues. When that strike action was paused in February, when it was becoming extremely effective, that was absolutely disastrous. And I know that many members at that point threw their hands up and said, what is the point? The ballot wasn't taken in time at all. It was supposed to be a summer ballot, and by nobody's interpretation is September the summer, and that left a huge mandate gap in terms of the marking and assessment boycott. And I also believe that the marking and assessment boycott should have been my dog again, should have been supported by strike action. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And sorry, Ewan, it is now your turn.
Thanks very much for the question, Stephen. It's a great question, an important one. I think there's three main reasons that we didn't win more in HE over 22-23. The first is the timing of the strike days. When strike days were called, often they're sort of odd days within term time, and it doesn't have an impact on employers. So, the most, call me old-fashioned, but as a labour lawyer, I think that strikes, if you have to take them, and hopefully you don't because you negotiate and get an agreement in good faith, that if you have to take them, it's got to impose an economic cost on the employer. So start of term, dates for tuition fee payments, and then also marking at times when your action could potentially have an impact. But second, I agree with a lot of what Vicky and Sarah have said. You've got all sorts of problems about the lack of coordination between the General Secretary and the NEC or HEC. And, when NEC is calling for it or HEC is calling for a ballot, the implementation of the ballot is delayed and delayed and delayed. And then the action further is delayed. So, the infighting has got to end. And the third thing was just the absence of coordination around the marking and assessment boycott. There was really nothing for the centre. Branches had to do their own thing. But in some cases, there were local wins. At King's, we also did a local strike ballot on top of the national strike ballot. When the national strike was called off, we said, well, we want our deals, and we got the first written collective agreement in over a decade. We got the highest London weighting in the capital, 42% up in local pay. We got 6 more weeks in paid parental leave, and we got more staff elected to the council. So, there were some wins, and we've got to have, just coherence and an end to the infighting with, a positive programme from the General Secretary. And I'm afraid that just has not happened in the last 5 years. Thank you,
Ewan. That was perfectly timed. What I'm going to do is, where questions are in the question and answer, I will also copy them into the chat so that everybody can see the question. I had a request to publish them in text form. The next question is from Tom Haynes-Duran, and I know that Tom, I think, would you prefer to ask this in person?
Yeah, if that's all right.
But I will also post it in the chat.
Good afternoon. Just supporting those points really about the sort of, I don't think you can organise a strike without democracy. I don't think it's effective because it doesn't include people that have to be taking part. And I have to say, in this branch, we have suffered for the lack of, this is a question.
Yes,
we have
could
suffered
you just
because of
ask the question, right, and the candidates will answer.
I don't often get to speak to the General Secretary. The question I have, therefore, is the democratic decisions of the union have been ignored by the General Secretary. There's nothing we can do about that apart from to remove the General Secretary. So my question is, do the candidates support the instant recall of the General Secretary if they go above and beyond their remit in terms of what they do on behalf of the union, which is what I believe has happened over the past few years? Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And the first person to answer this question is Jo, who is our current General Secretary, and Jo will be followed by Sarah.
Thank you. I mean, Tom, if you want to have a chat with me, let's pick that up after this meeting. I'm more than happy to speak direct to you. The first thing I'll say is I have never, despite many people saying it, overridden a democratic decision of the HEC. What has happened frequently is the HEC have either been split on things or not made a decision and it's been bounced to the next meeting, or have made decisions that people don't like. The General Secretary does not get a vote at NEC or its subcommittees. So I just need to put that on record. In terms of a recall mechanism, I have never been in opposition to it. There have been mechanisms that have been voted on in the past that haven't taken majority. But as far as I'm concerned, I will be in favour of not just a recall for the General Secretary, but a recall for NEC members as well. I think everyone who is elected to this union should be accountable to the members. But, you know, I think there needs to be some serious correctives of what are just often repeated, completely counterfactual things about what's happened this year. A ballot cannot be called, strike action cannot be called without the HEC voting on it. What you have been recipients of this year is a split HEC, and basically whoever turns up to HEC on the day carries a decision that is taken. You know, so on the issue of the delayed ballot, that was a decision that HEC didn't take. So what I'm asking people to do, I'm more than happy to support a recall mechanism. That's a matter of fact before, but vote for me and vote for the whole platform so that we can have an NEC that are all rallied behind a clear and coherent strategy. Thanks.
Thank you, Jo. And the next person is Sarah.
My straight answer is yes. I support the principle completely that elected trade union officers should be open to recall by members. It's a principle that socialists in the trade union movement have supported since the Paris Commune of 1871. And as General Secretary, I'd be willing and open to recall and have a recall mechanism. There is one now where branches can call a special no, I don't think they can actually. I don't know whether there's a recall for Congress, but I think it's really important as when there are motions to Congress to recall General Secretary. I think it's really important that we actually stand by what we say, and we should abide at all times by the decisions of our academic bodies and not deflect what's happened onto other people. There've been mechanisms where things can be called through the HE officers, and they didn't do that. Now, this is against, you know, not doing that was against union policy on taking regarding the reballot. And I would be absolutely in favour of the General Secretary intervening in this and saying you have to do it. So I don't think you should deflect onto other people. I do think there should be a recall system, and yeah, it's democracy that we want in the union and nothing else.
Thank you, Sarah. And now Ewan, please, and Ewan will be followed by Vicky.
Thanks very much, Tom. Great question. The answer is straightforwardly yes. And on top of this, if you look at the new terms for the General Secretary this year, it now says, whereas I think I'm right in saying it didn't before, that the National Executive Committee can give 6 months' notice to remove the General Secretary. I've worked in corporate governance and labour law my whole adult career. I firmly believe in accountability. And if you vote for me, I think one of the best ways that you can make sure that I'm held to account is through the democratic procedures that we need to have in our union, and that means removing me if I do something that is completely out of line with the platform that I stood on, the rules of the union, and also just working together with the National Executive Committee members. I mean, I said it before, I'll say it again, we've got to end this infighting, and we've got to have a coherent strategy by making sure that the General Secretary communicates with the NEC and doesn't get sort of bogged down into sort of factional politics. There's obvious role for factions in organising members' voice and positions, but people can disagree with one another without being disagreeable. And I think this point about democracy, if I can draw a bigger point, is so important for our union, because I want to see majority elected governing bodies elected by staff at every university and every college in the UK. And so we need to be a model at UCU of how democracy should work, so that we can go and confidently and clearly collectively bargain for democracy in all of our workplaces. So the council, the governing body at Leeds, every York, every university in the country should not have people chosen by the existing board. It shouldn't be like the papacy. It should be like Parliament. Thanks.
Thank you. And finally, for this question, Vicky.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. The short answer is yes. And also that I was part of, I in fact co-chaired the Democracy Commission in 2018-19 that tried to bring about a mechanism for this. And as we discovered, it became quite complex to implement a recall mechanism, but we did try. If you look at the records from the 2019 Congress that we had, the special one about that, you'll see that part of a rule change passed and part of it fell, and that was around an investigation. And I think that there are lots of issues identified by that Democracy Commission that remain unresolved, and that we need to identify where those union structures and practices require improvement or need updating. And a recall mechanism is absolutely one of them. So I commit, as General Secretary, if you elect me, to working with the NEC as my employer and with elected committees, members and UCU staff to develop thoughtful proposals that will engage and organise members and address where standards have slipped and where we have things missing in our procedures. And those progressive and workable rule changes will need to be put to a Congress with plenty of opportunity and support for widespread discussion amongst members in branches and regional and devolved national structures in advance. But yeah, the short answer is yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. We're about halfway through our time now, so I'm going to just let us take a short break, about no more than 5 minutes, just a comfort break, get a glass of water, whatever you need. After we come back, then I'm going to take the questions from Josh, Mark and James, who've all had their hands up and must by now have aching arms. So just a 5-minute break, please. Okay, I can see that Sarah's back. I'm hoping that, and Ewan is back. And Joe and Vicky are all back. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take the question now from Josh, because Josh, Mark and James have all had their hands up for a long time. So I'm going to take those questions. First of all, Josh, please.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is, many UCU members, especially those like me in post-92s, have been quite demoralised by the strategy adopted by the leadership of our union. And as the General Secretary repeatedly cites, we did win the largest ballot in HE history. Yet under their leadership, none of these 4 fights led to any substantial gains being won. And instead, we have a demoralised membership and management on their attack. So within this context, and especially given what we know about the concerning changes in TPS contributions, what strategy do the candidates have to win in these disputes? And specifically, what role will e-votes take? Thank you.
Thank you. And the first person to answer that question is Sarah.
Hi, thank you very much for that question, Josh. Yes, I understand people are demoralised. Members in my branch are demoralised, and people feel they've been badly let down. We're seeing universities, languages courses, arts and humanities courses being cut, and the latest being Kent. And I think the problem we have is we don't have a coordinated or agreed strategy. After the 4 fights, failure to reach the threshold, everything stopped. Now, I believe there should have been a special higher education sector conference to organise, to decide what we're going to do as members and how we are going to continue. And I still believe that we should have a special higher education sector conference, because I don't believe that we can let people fight in their branches one by one. We need a national collective agreement, or 4 nations national agreement, where we can challenge each other and come up with a policy that we can all agree with and is democratically decided. At the moment, we don't have one, and everyone is being left to fight on their own, which I think is unacceptable. So yeah, I think we do need to organise collectively around this urgently. I will leave it there.
Thank you. Could we please go on to Ewan?
Josh, really important question, and I think that there's multiple answers, but I'll try and do my best. So first, you're absolutely right. The TPS contributions going up is an absolute disaster waiting to happen potentially, and so what UCU has to do, from yesterday, from last year, is it needs to be absolutely coherent and clear with the government that these contributions should not be going up, because you can fund your pension, you can fund the TPS without having contribution rises. It's not like USS in pre-92 universities, where there's a fund of money and fluctuations according to the stock market. TPS is funded by the government, and there is no reason except that Jeremy Hunt wants more cash in his back pocket, more of our cash in his back pocket, that the contributions need to go up. So the first thing is a political fact, and it's about being coherent. Secondly, I think that we've got to do much better at UCU in showing how much money universities have. I mean, UCU has actually done some good work on, the surpluses that exist, but, we need to be pointing to managements and saying, look, you've got money that can stop the decline in pay. And absolutely, post-92 universities have not seen any gains at all in the last 5 years. And the final thing is that pay has got to be sector-wide, but we can make lots of gains through pattern bargaining through every branch, spreading the same patterns to get gains on parental leave, measures to end the pay gaps. Workloads are really institution-specific, department-specific even issue. So, it would be great to have a national agreement, but we can also do a lot on top of that locally. And written collective agreements for job security, ending casualisation, and just a legal department that actually takes up cases to stop sham self-employment, to stop the abuse of fixed-term contracts. So if you vote at this election, that's exactly what will happen. We will get a legal department that fights for every member at UCU.
Thank you, Ewan. And Vicky, please.
Thanks. A lot to say in 2 minutes. So there are 3 things I think that we need to do. We need to create trust in our strategies by actually discussing them ahead of the meetings where we vote on them. And we need to do that with really productive dialogue and listening to each other. And to discuss them fully, we need complete and accurate research, and we need any relevant legal advice. We need that in advance. We need to be coordinating across branches, and that's why I've talked about organising hubs to do more horizontal organising across our union, and branches supporting branches as well in my manifesto. On balloting, I think that digital tools that we have should be used to supplement but not to sidestep our democratic structures. So if you have a well-constructed, clear electronic survey, it can serve an important function, but I don't think it would be something where it makes sense to unnecessarily restrict options. It's a really damaging thing when they confuse, complicate decision making. On post 92 specifically, I want to say that the way that the issue with TPS is serving as an extra tax on post 92 institutions does need to be tackled politically and very strongly, but it isn't the only reason that there are problems in post 92. So we need a joint strategy of that political approach, the industrial approach, and we also need to be holding our employers to account for their poor decision making, their poor financial decisions that have brought them into a worse position, and it should not be staff who suffer. I hope I've covered everything in your question. There was a lot there. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Vicky. And finally, for this question, Jo.
Thank you. I think it's best to start by saying the biggest issue we had was there was no strategy. We triggered a ballot in the summer of 2022 with no strategy. And once we got, past the threshold of the ballot, it was a meeting by meeting decision as to what we were going to do next. Now, to return to the broader point, we have been on a ballot treadmill on both pay and pensions in higher education. It has made it almost impossible to develop and then take out to members and take out to branches a plan that people know what a win would look like and know, what we are seeking to win exactly. That was one of the biggest things when I went into branches, that we were seeking to kind of win on all fronts with an employer who wanted to concede none, a nasty, aggressive employer. What I will say going forward is the next time we do this, we have to take members with us every step of the way. On my website, gradyforgs.com, there is a clear plan as to how we're going to do this. It involves consulting members, campaigning, recruiting, balloting, but crucially, coordinating with other unions. Because UCU rushes into a ballot really quickly without a plan and a strategy, we haven't been able to do that national level coordination to bring every other union with us, which in pay is crucial. So we do need a proper industrial strategy. I have listed exactly what I believe we should do on my website. In terms of post-92s, I think we really need to move for a political solution on student distributions. As you know, we have some pre-92s hoovering up students. It's creating volatility in student numbers. It's creating not just casualisation, but spikes in workload, threats of course closure, all of which are felt more keenly by our post-92s. So that's a key priority for me going forward.
Thank you, Jo. I'm now going to apologise to Mark and to James because I said I would take your questions next, but I'm really aware that all the questions we've had so far have related to higher education, and there are several questions in the Q&A about further education. One of them is from Linda. So Linda, I'll put your question in the chat, but would you like to ask your question yourself?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Linda Littler, UCU Branch Secretary from Leeds City College. So far this election, appears to have been so dominated by HE. I would like to ask the members what they would say to the FE members that appear to have been left out, and what are your plans for FE? Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And the first person to answer that question will be Ewan, and then it'll be Vicky.
Thanks very much, Linda. It's so important. I've got two very close family members who worked in FE in London and in the south of England. And so I think that it's absolutely crucial that FE is rebuilt in the next 5 years to create the skills of the future that we need in this country. The really big thing that we need to get in FE is have a coordinated national strategy, which is currently lacking. There's currently workplace by workplace bargaining and ballots. We need to have national bargaining for higher pay. There needs to be, if necessary, aggregated strike ballots. And there's a very simple goal that I've stated in my platform, which is we need to close the gap with teachers, roughly a 20% difference in pay. Of course, it varies by college, but it's absolutely crucial to close that gap through national bargaining and also a new political settlement, hopefully with a different government not too long away. But regardless of the government, it has got to be wrong that FE college staff are being paid so much less than teachers. And by the way, teaching pay needs to go up as well. So I've been talking about the need for a national education service, HE, FE, schools, all together, adult life learning, all together in a new national education service, free at the point of use, based on coordination and not cutthroat competition. So we need to be putting forward that positive vision for the future, and it's so important that we go just as hard and win just as much in FE as we're trying to do in HE, and that's definitely what I'll do.
Thank you very much, Ewan. Vicky.
Thank you. I work with FE colleagues in my job. I work in widening participation, and I help young people navigate barriers to accessing post-16 education, and that involves working with colleges as well as schools. And I have always worked in lockstep with FE members when doing work like, for example, on the Anti-Casualisation Committee, on the Education Committee. I'm co-chair of the Climate and Ecological Emergency Committee, and we're currently working very closely with the bargaining team to embed climate demands in the FE national claim. And I think the thing is that the way to make FE matter is to listen to FE members, to be present in branches and invest time. And that's what I want to commit to as General Secretary. And I think despite the very hard work of our members, pay and conditions in FE have stagnated very badly. We need also to tackle really serious issues like bullying, like union busting, the toxicity of the Ofsted regime, and the incredibly difficult, often very dangerous workloads and difficult class sizes, increased global hours, and so on. And I think, first of all, we have to recognise that FE branches are often fighting with fewer resources than many HE branches, and we need to change this. So I'll do this through support on the ground, but also greater resources from the centre, and that includes a UCU facilities time campaign that I want to launch that is aimed at increasing the capacity of branch reps and increasing support for network building. Second, we need to prioritise building a sustainable national action for FE members. That's to challenge the many, many colleges refusing to implement national pay increases in England and outside England, to take to task the employers who are refusing to improve conditions, because we do have binding sectoral bargaining in Wales and Northern Ireland. I want to work with our FE committee and across regions on a strategy to make the widest action possible across the sector with proper support for members. And thirdly, we need a complementary political strategy. We have to get FE funding increased.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you. Now, Joe, if you could answer the same question, please, about FE, and after Joe, it'll be Sarah.
Well, first of all, thank you, Linda. I think this is spot on, a bit of injection of FE into proceedings. On my website, there is a specific FE vision. It outlines where we are, what we've done, what we need to achieve. It covers prison and adult ed. Check it out, because it's more than I can say in 2 minutes. What I would say is, I think we can learn so much from FE, both in terms of the terms of the debate, the flexibility of the membership, in terms of what people are willing to consider. We've won more ballots in FE than ever before. We've got some really good settlements. We know there's issues with national bargaining in FE, and obviously we're developing and currently following a strategy to get all of our branches back to a capacity to be in a national dispute. That's the ultimate goal. But I think, in terms of outside of that balloting process, we know that workload is an issue. We have been piloting specifically in FE in the London region, an approach to workload to make sure that we can call in the HSSE that this is a hazard, and we intend, if I'm re-elected, to roll that out to everyone. In terms of England FE specifically, we know that pay parity with school teachers is achievable. It's happened in Scotland, it's happened in Wales. England and Northern Ireland are the outliers. So in addition to a clear health and safety-based workload campaign, we are going to campaign relentlessly on pay. Now, we know that we can get more money into the sector because you, amazing FE members, and our union have delivered it in the last 2 years. So we are pushing on an open door. There is a kind of political consensus now about the importance of FE, but we haven't managed yet to transform that into what we need for your working conditions. But I really fundamentally believe that the staff that we've got in HQ and the people that we've got in the regions, you on the ground, because I know your college has done amazing stuff, we can do this. So please vote for me and vote for David Hunter for VP, who is excellent and will deliver.
Thank you, Jo. And finally, for this question, Sarah.
Hi, a great question. I've also got a bit in my a manifesto for FE on my website, sarah4gs.wordpress.com. Go and have a look. Now, FE is really important to me. I studied in FE, and I know from personal experience how FE can change people's lives. FE lecturers are fantastically committed to their students, to equality, and I agree with everything said about them being crucial to getting the skills for a green, to save the environment, actually, to sort out some of the issues in the climate crisis. They deserve absolutely better paying conditions. When we grow union membership, we grow union membership by showing how the presence of union makes a difference in the workplace. And you can see that in my region, which is the Northwest. We must work absolutely to restore national bargaining in FE in England. We already have it in Wales, and we've got EIS and national bargaining in the North of Ireland as well. And this means building for a nationally aggregated action. And I talked about this in my introduction. I think we must also keep up the lobbying for proper funding of the FE sector. And we can see that what FE comrades in Scotland in the EIS did, they've won back national pay bargaining by linking their strikes and their industrial action to the elections at the Scottish Parliament, therefore raising the political profile of the election of the education during an election. We have an election coming up. So rather than limiting strikes to help represent the Labour Party as a reasonable government in waiting, they took the argument for education into the election and actually won through constant strike action and threats of it. We cannot have a situation where we have some winners.
Thank you,
and
Sarah.
losers.
I'm sorry, that's your 2 minutes. Mark, you have been waiting very patiently, and I believe that Sandy has some text for your question. So Mark Taylor-Batty, please. And Sandy, if you could paste the text into the chat.
Thanks very much. Welcome to Leeds, albeit virtually, colleagues. Predictably, I'm going to ask a question about the pension scheme, of course, and the pension dispute. And really, it's a question about when to pause and when to hit hard with when you've got a mandate for industrial action. So last year, we USS negotiated, we got a set of commitments from UK in some joint statements. There was then a vote to note or reject the progress that was taken. 83% of members, I think it was, voted to note. So the question is, what was the value or the downside of pausing industrial action at that point? Was there something else that we could have won? Because, of course, ultimately, everything that we got, we already had in the joint statements. There was nothing added to any of that. So I just wondered if there's any reflection on any trick we missed by not continuing industrial action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And the first person to answer this question will be Vicky, and after Vicky, it'll be Joe.
Thank you. It was really clear to me that we had made more progress at that time in USS versus the forfeits dispute. So while we had had that dual strategy and it had helped us for a long time in bringing all of those issues forward and getting our ballots out, I felt at that point that we very much did need to consult with the membership on progress in USS, but we needed to do that separated out from anything that we were doing with regards to forfeits. So because I felt very strongly that we needed to note, that means not to say everything's done, because we didn't have everything signed on the dotted line. I mean, indeed, that was done on Monday. We needed to make sure that we were ready to move if we needed to, but we were not going to gain anything more. And in fact, I think we might have endangered progress in USS had we continued to take industrial action on USS. The problem that we had, I think, around that time was a lot of confusion about how we were going to consult on both disputes. And I'm co-produced a motion that went to HEC and passed that secured an appropriately constituted approach to that consultation so that only the people in USS would have a say on USS and only the people who are in the forfeits dispute would have a say in that one. We hadn't won the dispute basically at that point, but we did have evidence that we'd got to a point where further industrial action wasn't going to get more movement. And we didn't just need to accept at that point because we had not yet won. So I think that the right call was to note. That's what I advocated for, and I stand by it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. And the next person to answer that question is Joe.
Thanks. Really good question, Mark. Nice to have a clear question from someone who was there and knows how things worked. For me, and I've been clear about this on my website, not pausing the action then I think could have severely jeopardized us actually getting a resolution in the USS dispute. The thing that many people won't have known is that I think USS were actually in a position before Christmas to potentially go public with the things that they went public with during that pause period. But what they needed and wanted from us was an indication that we wanted to settle the dispute too. So ironically, that dispute I think could have even been settled earlier if the two disputes hadn't been linked, but they were, and there we are. So we paused it. I really don't think that there was anything more to have been won. The team, including you, Mark, don't blush, did an amazing job. I think in terms of the noting and rejecting, it did put us in a sticky spot, which thankfully didn't come to fruition. I talked earlier about the fact that HEC was split. If the votes could have fallen differently at HEC meeting, we could have seen more action called over USS. We could have seen another ballot called over USS. I think the note reject thing actually meant that USS and the progress we've made hung in the balance. And most people probably don't realize this, for a lot longer than it should have done. But to answer your question very simply, the pause was crucial in delivering a USS victory. There is no two ways about it. It was. It allowed USS to go public with things that they've been talking about privately to us for months. And I think anybody at the time who was advocating for more action, I hope now would reflect on that and say, I made the wrong call, because in my opinion, more action would probably have led to employers backtracking from what they had committed to and saying that the contribution split could have been different, and the what we have now basically could have been to some extent off the table other than the restoration.
Thank you, Joe. The next person to answer that question is Sarah.
Hi, yeah, thank you. The issue is we did have continuing industrial action through all USS branches anyway, with the forfeits dispute. So I'm not really sure what you're asserting with this question. Is it that you were ultimately successful because we paused the industrial action, which it seems to be, therefore you were right and those who opposed pausing were wrong? Because I think this is a really odd claim. Equally, it might be argued that we could have got more had we pursued strike action. In any case, industrial action, as I said, did continue across those branches, and I'm certain, absolutely certain, they continue to watch. I think the first responsibility of a negotiator is to understand that negotiation is not a partnership. We are in negotiations to represent our members and defend our rights, and not to argue about how money is spent within a cost envelope set by our adversaries. Yes, of course, a high degree of pragmatism may be required when members are not prepared to take action, but they were. I think that negotiators took a risk, which actually ended up paying off in the end, in standing down that action. The US valuation would not contain that. The risk was that the USS valuation would not contain any nasty surprises, and it may well have. But given that you knew USS had set its assets decline by 20 billion from 90 billion to 70 billion in October 92, the outcome was by no means certain at this time, and you were absolutely not all the way along advocating for a no detriment, which the UCU left negotiators, I believe, were. So, you know, I worry about what this is about: digging up past wrongs or criticising the notion of, you know, we need to keep our foot down before we know we've actually won. We won, which is great, and we need to learn that strike action can win.
Thank you. And finally, for this question, Ewan, please.
Thanks very much, Mark. I mean, the straightforward answer to your question is that rejecting and taking more industrial action, I don't think would have achieved a great deal, although it is true to say that it wasn't finally agreed. And that's why I was saying noting is not enough. We needed to go on and get the deal sealed. But I want to take a step back, which is what is the relationship between industrial action and collective bargaining? And my view is very, very clear. Industrial action has got to be used as a last resort. But if you do need to use it, you've got to make sure that you're in a position to take action which is decisive and is going to impose a cost on the employer. And so you make sure that you win strike ballots, you make sure that all your members are organized, if there's a marking and assessment boycott, that we know exactly what we're going to do, so that you can bargain from a position of strength. You need to bargain from a position of strength in order to get a collective agreement in good faith with the other side. And I agree that there isn't exactly partnership between employers and unions, but you've got to try and foster a climate of good faith negotiation. And it's so important that the parties are not doing things that are adverse to the negotiation process during the period of negotiation. And I feel this very strongly because at my branch, we were collectively bargaining over the course of about 2 years to get local collective agreements. So you know that we did a joint statement on pension restoration and reducing contributions, which we've done now. And of course, we weren't necessarily saying they had to reduce contributions straight away, but we also won pay, local pay, parental leave, a collective agreement, more representation on the council. And we did it all without actually having to take strike action, because the employers knew that if we did, it would be decisive.
Thank you, Ewan. We have time for just one more question. So I put a little message in the chat asking people to upvote the question. We have 4 votes for Chris Abbott's question. So, and I'm very pleased about that because it's about FE. So, Chris, if you would like to ask your question of the candidates, please.
Hi, yeah. My question to all the candidates just around FE. Obviously, we spoke a little bit about how sometimes we feel a bit left out. But it's more about actually when we think the right time to call an aggregate ballot in FE for decisive industrial action would be.
Thank you, Chris. And the first person to answer that question will be Joe, and after Joe, it'll be Sarah.
Thanks, Chris. I think this is a really important question, but there's one thing I want to say before it, because I actually think the fact that it can be asked at a GS Hustings I think exposes why I think FE is in a really positive place in our union, because this is a big political question in FE, and it's a debate that's happening and one that's quite fluid, and that everybody who's taking part in it wants to make sure that we get the best possible answer. And I don't think that that's always the case when we have these very intense debates in HE. So in terms of when we should have it, again, there's a plan on my website that's very clear about the things that we need to do. In some of our branches at the moment in FE, even if we called a ballot and we got over the line, I think it would be difficult to know exactly how they would feature in that. At the minute, we can't call an aggregate ballot that has every branch in. We would have to call the branches that are negotiating with the AOC, which would not be all of our branches. Again, I've said that we can't, in my opinion, I don't think we should be putting branches in a national ballot who don't want to be in one yet because they're not ready. I think it's really dangerous to expose a branch to a ballot that they don't want to be in. And if they don't get a good turnout, then expose them to their college principal as not being perceived as organised. So I've been really clear. We're currently following a strategy in FE to get us back to national bargaining, but we need to make sure that we follow the strategy and the plan and get everybody there so that we don't weaken ourselves on that journey. I actually think we're getting there at a quicker pace than I thought we would. We are doing it at the minute by getting as many branches as possible in. We had over 100 branches in our FE ballot this year. It raised the profile, it raised the funding, it's made AOC behave differently. But I think we need to keep doing the improper and important groundwork that we are and not trigger one this summer. I'll be really honest about that.
Thank you, Jo. The next person to answer that question is Sarah.
I talked about this a bit in the earlier question on FE. As I said before, in order to get the maximum leverage, there's a general election coming up. And I think it's really important that the pressure is put on now for better terms and conditions, including pay for people in FE. And we've also seen that the TPS rises have been underwritten by the government this year, but there's no promise on the next one. So we could have a situation where branches, FE are facing, the colleges are facing the 5% increase in TPS. So I think we need to lay out our plans very carefully now and have an aggregated ballot as soon as possible. We can't be having winners and losers in this. We need people to get a decent pay rise. People cannot wait. That we've had, pay cuts across the board for many years. And I don't think it's something you can just kind of sit and wait for. And we know that the mood is in FE for an aggregate ballot. And also the Further Education Committee have recently decided that they are going to move forward with an aggregated ballot as soon as possible, which raises a question that surely the General Secretary should be supporting FEC decisions rather than opposing them, because actually as a united union where we follow the democratic decisions of our members, that's from sector conferences and FEC decisions, then we can move forward together and people be involved because they believe that they've got a say in, that their opinion matters. And again, I'm not quite sure whether they do so at the moment.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ewan, and after Ewan, it'll be Vicky.
Thanks very much, Chris. I think that you need to be in a position as a union to do an aggregate ballot anytime. And so on day one, if you elect me, we will make sure that we get every single ballot that ever comes through UCU with maximum turnout. And I'm not just talking about 50% turnout, I'm talking about as close to 100% turnout as possible, because I genuinely believe that our right to vote as union members is not just a right that we that is just for us, but it's also a duty that we have and that we owe to each other to help one another to improve our pay, our working conditions. And so we've got to change the way in which we talk about how we do ballots. We've got to frame the discussion as the importance of voting to help our fellow union members. But technically speaking, I think there's another thing that we've got to do, and I will do straight away if I'm elected, and that's that we change the way that we get ballot turnout. So at the moment, you have central UCU sort of calling up people to find people who voted, but not picking people off on a common list that you have in branches. Anyone who's done this at branch level will know that there's this terrible database called branch.ucu.org.uk, which has names on it, but branches are really left to themselves to get voter turnout. There's no coordination whatsoever, and it's so simple to change, like literally with a matter of changing spreadsheets. And these are the simple technical changes we should have had a long time ago. So then what you've got to do is you've got to bargain in good faith. And so if one of us gets elected, unlike Joe, it'll be August when we come in. So we've got to do it as soon as then we're prepared.
Thank you. So finally for this question, Vicky, and whilst Vicky's speaking, I'm going to put all the names back in the box and give them a shake up to find out which order you're going to summarise in. So Vicky, if you'd like to answer this question, please.
Thanks. Well, I think it's important to note that the sector conference in summer did vote for an aggregated ballot to start in January 2024. And obviously that hasn't happened. We're in February. And I think to understand where we are with FE and what we need to do to be able to get an aggregated ballot over the line, which would be incredibly powerful, we need to return to the questions of confidence and resources. And as General Secretary, I would put in a massive amount of resources into organising in FE and invest also in regional organisers. I think that the point of this is to not focus on what's difficult as a reason not to do something, but to investigate the stuff that is difficult. So, for example, less facilities time, fewer resources in FE branches on average, and work out how we're going to address those to make it possible to do what our members decided that we want to do. Because we desperately need a more connected approach to organising, to sharing resources and peer support, and that will help us to boost the get the vote out strategies that we need to be successful in an aggregated ballot. And I've talked about this quite a lot with FE members recently on the picket line at Myerscough College and also at Bradford College. And it's absolutely clear that when you have members' confidence, that you show that you care and you are listening to members in branches, they are much more likely to feel the possibility of winning and therefore vote to win and turn out to win on that picket line. I think FE members show tremendous tenacity, incredible determination in their local disputes. And I want to pay tribute to the local leaders and UCU staff who have delivered recent pay deals. But in England, we don't have that collective bargaining yet. We need it, and we have to push hard to get there to make it binding. And the current reality is that if we carry on the way we're going, FE will continue to decline, and we can't afford that. So that's why we need the 3-point plan I talked about: increased resources, building sustainable national sectoral action, and campaigning with learners for greater funding as well to include that political arm. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Okay, so first of all, I would like to apologise to everybody who's had a question and hasn't been able to ask it, but we have more or less run out of time. We're going to give the candidates 2 minutes each just to summarise just anything that's been left. The first person to speak will be Vicky, it'll then be Ewan and Sarah and then Joe. I've just pulled them randomly out of the box. So Vicky, you have 2 minutes.
Oh, sorry, can I just check if I've unmuted successfully? My computer's
You are successfully unmuted.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, my computer's telling me I have issues with my connection, so hopefully I will stay with you.
We can hear you.
Okay, so thank you very much for this and for being here. And I'm really glad that we've had a good mixture of FE and HE people attending. I hope that you will vote for me as your first preference, but absolutely whatever you do, please do vote. It's your union, and I think we need substantial change, and that needs to begin at the top. I promise to work hard to represent and advocate for all of you, for all members across adult and community education, prison education, and FE and HE. And as part of that, to spend meaningful time with branches, getting to know you, getting to know the issues across all parts of the UK. And a lot of my manifesto is very practical. It talks about building the infrastructure that we need to develop to help us to succeed. I also want to make equality a practice that cements our commitments to equity and safety at the heart of what we're doing as a union, as well as fighting for that in the workplace. And I think it's really important also that we argue for the significance of all our post-16 education providers to their local and regional economies. I speak about these as anchor institutions that are vital for communities. I think we need to work together and re-establish care as a central value. And I am ready to do that work with you, to respect our union's democracy, to address our union's culture, and to take a really genuinely participative approach to it. My job will be to amplify your voice as members and to enact the democratic decisions of the union. And I will prioritise that bridge building within our union and also with the staff union Unite, because we really need to move forwards. So in short, please do use your votes. And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Next is Ewan, please.
Thanks very much, and thank you to all of the 62 participants who are still in the room after this debate. I've appreciated all the questions, and thanks again for using your time to come. I'd really be great if you could give me your first preference. There are other great candidates in this race as well, and also in the NEC contest. So it's really important that you get your ballot and that you put it in the post, and that you tell all of your friends and colleagues to vote as well, because what I just said, I really mean. I think that voting is not just a right, but it's also a duty that we owe to one another to improve each other's working lives and transform the society around us. The goals that I have, I think, are clear and winnable on fair pay, democracy, equality, and security, and a living planet, and being part of a new national education service. You can be confident that if you cast your vote for me, if I'm lucky enough to get your preferences, then I will work tirelessly in order to get results for you. And you can be confident that I have the experience of doing this, not just in running my local branch for 3 years when we got a series of really important deals, but also turning around the branch from one that was losing ballots, one that had done nothing for members before, to one that became one of the most successful in the country. So, as I say, there are a lot of other good candidates with a lot of other things to offer, but I hope that you would cast a vote for me. And if you need any more persuading, just go to unmg.uk, look at the people that are supporting me under the /support sign, see what they're saying. Read, inform yourselves, and also just thank you for being members of our union, because it's so important that we show solidarity to one another. Hope you have a great afternoon and a great weekend.
Thank you, Ewan. Sarah.
Yeah, first of all, I'd echo that everybody should vote, whether you vote for me or not. Although obviously I'm also arguing that you should vote for me. And if you have, other preferences, I would argue for Vicky and possibly Ewan as well. We clearly have a choice, and you'll see this from the answer you've received. You can either have a General Secretary who believes in democracy, who believes that we can win, not sometime in the future, but believes that we can win now, and believes that our members are central to that doesn't claim victories as for their own, for themselves, but understands that it's the members who create those victories, and the members who have to be central to the decision making on that through the democratic procedures and improved ones. I think it's a real shame that we didn't get to discuss things like the BDS question or the stuff about, or anything about minimum service legislation. I think we should be, as a union, really fighting and campaigning for BDS across our workplace, across the country and internationally. And if that is illegal, as they are trying to make striking illegal with the minimum service legislation, I think we have got to be able to be prepared to fight with other unions and disobey that legislation. We have to be brave at this point, because if we're not a union that's brave, what are we? I also think that we need to mend the relationship in the UCU Unite branch and publish all the findings from investigations into racism, etc. there to the branch, even if not publicly. Democratic decision making is the heart of our union.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay,
Thank you. Now over to Jo.
Thank you. I'm going to get into my closing in a second, but I do think it's important, the last answer that Ewan gave, I just want to correct something. The system for ballots was developed by our brilliant staff at UCU, who for pretty much the last 4 years have worked around the clock, helping us do GTPO. And I think it's pretty inappropriate for any candidate to use their platform during this election to kind of call it out as unacceptable. With that said, back to what we're talking about. This has been an amazing turnout today. I am super happy that we've had a range of questions across our sectors. I think we all know that we're in a union because we want to see things get better. So some things we know we have to improve on. In some cases, the struggle will always mean we're trying to improve things. We need to keep building as a union. That means building our membership. It does mean being strategic. It means improving the working lives of all of our members. We've been very successful at this in, let's take our prison members. They rarely get mentioned enough in these events, and they have been doing some amazing organising and getting some amazing wins. And I want all of the things that we've been doing in this union to continue. And one of the reasons I've been so clear about my strategic plans for HE and FE is I'm saying, if you elect me, you will be electing a general secretary who has set out what we should be doing. I think our members deserve that. So if you want a reset, if you want a plan, vote for me, vote for David Hunter as the vice president. Everyone can vote for him. You don't have to be in FE, and vote for everyone else who is running on the Grady for GS platform. They are running for the NEC2 and they are backing the same change as me. That is gradyforgs.com/platform. Thank you for the questions. And you can also submit more to me via the website if you'd like to. And please, if you haven't voted, do. And if you have voted, please spend this weekend contacting people and getting more ballots in the post box.
Thank you, Jo. So we have actually run out of time but I'd really like to thank all of the candidates, Sarah, Ewan, Jo and Vicky, for joining us today. I'd really like to thank everybody that has asked questions. And again, I apologise to anybody whose question didn't get answers. And I'd also like to thank the members of the Leeds branch who have provided support in the background. We've got Jenny, Emily's left, Sandy, I can't see who else is still here, and Robin Orfatelli, who helped me to organise this. So thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Aisha.
Thank you.
See you later, everyone.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everybody. Don't forget to vote.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.